So honestly, reading books is a really good resource for music production. I've read a bunch of them over the years, so I thought it'd be fun to chat about 7 or so of them, and I'll give you my recommendations. So number 1 on the list is something that I really can't recommend enough, and that's the Mixing Engineer's Handbook. I actually don't know where my copy has gone. It's a really great overarching reference book for all things mixing. It's targeted mostly towards beginners. It's very objective, factual style book. It has a really good content, lots of visual aids and pictures. You can read it front to back, but you can also just flick to whatever page or whatever thing that you want to read about. So it goes into everything from EQs to compressors. The thing about mixing is you kind of need to know all of the tools that you have in the mixing process. Otherwise, it becomes much harder to do. So in terms of beginner mixing style book, I rate this very highly. Also, still in the world of mixing, a different book, and actually a very different style as well. This is called Zen and the Art of Mixing. And this book gives you a really good overview into the world of a mixing engineer, how a professional mixing engineer thinks. So this is definitely more of a personal, opinionated perspective of mixing rather than a factual handbook, which is the last one. But I really like the subjectivity to it. I think it's really interesting because of it. It actually reads really well because he has a strong writing voice in it. This goes much more into the mindset and the conceptual side of mixing. It taught me a lot about how I go about mixing and my mixing workflow as well. Definitely more of a front to back read rather than a flick through, but I've also made some notes in here and you can just sort of flick to particular pages at the same time. So it's a bit of both really. So non-visual, much more conceptual, more intermediate, really highly recommended if you want something that's more like an interesting mixing related read. If you want a book about workflow, then we have a free PDF guide. It's called the Ableton Workflow Bible, so I'll leave the link in the description below for that one. So the next one is The Secrets of Dance Music Production, and this is a really highly recommended book, and for very good reason as well. Unlike the other books, this one is specific to dance music production, and it gives you much more of an overarching view of things. It gives you insight into synthesis, drum programming, mixing. This book is really visual as well. It's also quite up to date, which is really nice. It's designed for beginners to tackle the whole process of music production rather than just one specific area like mixing or like sound design. So if you're a beginner, you're wanting to do electronic music and you want a book that more or less does it all, then this is a really good recommendation for that. So the next book is called 74 Creative Strategies for Electronic Music Production. It's a book in the very minimalist design of Ableton. It's sold from the Ableton website, has Ableton examples in it, but just like really all of the books on this list, it's not dedicated just for a DAW. But this book is a bit different to the others because it's laid out in like a problem solution sort of question and answer style read. So this book is less so like a read front to back style. This is something that you can just have around you all the time. You can just pick it up, flick through it, have a look and get inspired by what you're reading. I would recommend this book more so to intermediates that are sort of struggling to know how to take the next step. It can also work for beginners and advanced producers as well. So more so all across the board, but I think sort of more specifically targeted towards those intermediates. About a quarter of this book is actually online on the Ableton website as well. So it's split up into 3 different categories: problems of beginning, problems of progressing, and problems of finishing. And so let's just click on one of these and I'll show you sort of more or less an example of what it's like. So the problem is that DAWs usually sort of align things into grids and blocks, and it feels hard to get a fluid musical structure. Everything feels very rigid and sharp edges and refined, and you want a little bit more emotion in your music. So it then talks about anticipation and drum fills and gives you some examples of some things you can do to spice up the arrangement a little bit. This book is not trying to lay out everything. It's not trying to show you everything. So I wouldn't put it in the beginner category because of that. So overall, I really like this book. I think it's really cool and a really useful one to have. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you a little bit of inspiration, something that's always nice to have around, I would highly recommend this book for that. Okay, so music theory for computer musicians. This is a very basic sort of theory focused book in the sort of DAW MIDI environment. It's targeted at beginners that want to learn more about theory. It sort of goes over all the basic concepts of intervals, notes, chords. The only thing that I'm worried about this book is that it's a little bit brief and it's a little bit dated. I think it was published in 2008 and the reality is there's a lot that has changed since then. So what I would recommend instead, trying out this book. It's called Music Theory for Electronic Music Producers. This is quite an extensive book that goes over a lot of different music theory content. It's actually written by an Ableton certified trainer, and it has a whole bunch of Ableton sort of piano roll screenshots and stuff like that in it as well. So that's a bonus if you're in Ableton, but of course, again, not specified to Ableton at all. The first 30 pages are free to preview online, so that's what we're gonna do. I guess I'll leave the link in the description. Starts off with very basic music theory related content and goes all the way to, I would say, very solid intermediate. So if you did come to this video looking for a music theory related book, then I would personally recommend this one. I guess you could call this like a bonus recommendation. The last one for today is Rockenomics, and this is a different style of book than all the rest of them. This is more so like a music industry related book. Talks a bit about the psychology of how people consume music, how music is shared, the trends behind music charting. It even has a whole section that talks about luck in the music industry, how much of it is luck. If you have like a sort of more analytical science mind like me, then I think you would really like this book. So overall, interesting read when it comes to music industry and sort of business side of things. So that's it. Thanks for watching. If you found a book out of this and actually enjoyed the content in this video, remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And if there's a book that you've read that I haven't mentioned in the list, let me know in the comments below and I'll check it out as well. But otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.